It all started on a Monday morning segment of The View, one that was supposed to be light-hearted, filled with celebrity banter and political chatter. Denzel Washington was invited as a special guest, promoting a new project rooted in civic leadership and education reform. But no one, not even the producers, expected the tension that would erupt live on air. The first 15 minutes went smoothly. Denzel, as always, carried himself with calm composure, speaking passionately about community service, mentoring youth, and the importance of critical thinking in today's world. Then came Rosie O'Donnell. She leaned forward at the table, eyebrows raised, and asked with a grin that didn't quite reach her eyes, "Denzel, I gotta ask, do you really think you're qualified to talk policy just because you've played smart characters in movies?" The studio audience let out a collective murmur. The question didn't land like a joke. It landed like a jab. Sunny Hostin blinked. Joy Behar raised her coffee mug mid-sip, suddenly quiet. Even Whoopi Goldberg shifted in her seat, visibly uncomfortable. Denzel's smile didn't budge. He reached for his water, took a slow sip, and looked Rosie square in the eye. "Rosie," he began, his voice smooth but steely, "you're assuming I need to pretend to be intelligent just to be taken seriously on policy. But I don't act intelligence, I practice it." The audience gave a surprised "oh-h" as Rosie tried to brush it off with a chuckle, but Denzel wasn't finished. Rosie shifted in her seat, chuckling nervously. "I'm just saying," she added quickly, "sometimes actors get a little too into their roles. Doesn't mean you're a policy expert." Denzel tilted his head slightly, still calm, but now razor-sharp. "And yet," he said, his voice steady, "I've spent more time in underserved schools, mentoring kids in broken systems, than most politicians I've met in Washington." There was no applause like needed. The audience erupted naturally. Rosie opened her mouth, but Denzel continued, not missing a beat. "I don't come on shows like this to argue talking points. I come because there are young men out there who look like me and think they can't be more than what they see on TV. I don't need a PhD to know their future is worth fighting for." Rosie's smile vanished. Her eyes dropped briefly to the table. Whoopi jumped in to break the tension, nodding with visible admiration. "That's what I've always respected about you, Denzel. You show up. You do the work." Rosie tried to recover, offering a faint shrug. All right, I didn't mean it as shade. Just making conversation." But Denzel wasn't letting the moment pass without clarity. "Words matter, Rosie. Especially when millions are watching." The room fell silent for a second time, not out of awkwardness this time, but out of respect. Rosie sat back, visibly rattled now. She wasn't used to being on the receiving end of public correction, especially not from someone as composed and respected as Denzel Washington. She cleared her throat and tried again, this time with a hint of defensiveness. "Okay, but I think we should question celebrities when they talk politics. I mean, you're not in Congress. You're not an expert. That's all I meant." Denzel nodded thoughtfully, but his gaze didn't waver. "And I agree. We should question everyone, including politicians who've been in office for decades and still haven't solved the basics. The problem isn't who's asking the questions. The problem is who's actually doing the work." He leaned slightly forward, locking eyes with Rosie. "I didn't come here to campaign. I came to speak truth. And the truth is, when your name carries weight, you've got a responsibility, whether you're in politics, entertainment, or on this very panel." Another wave of applause rippled through the audience, this time longer, louder. Even Joy Behar clapped slowly, impressed. Sunny Hostin turned to Rosie with a half-smile and muttered, "Might be time to switch topics, huh?" Rosie gave a tight smile, clearly outmatched. "Fair enough." But Denzel gave her one last look, not cruel, just firm. "Just remember, Rosie, being underestimated is one of the greatest advantages a person can have. You've reminded me of that today." Rosie didn't respond. The cameras cut to commercial break. During the commercial break, the tension lingered in the studio like static. Crew members whispered behind cameras. Audience members exchanged glances, some still in stunned silence, others quietly applauding Denzel's poise. Rosie sat stiffly, adjusting her microphone, visibly unsettled. Denzel remained calm, unbothered, casually chatting with Sunny Hostin, who leaned in with a genuine smile. As the cameras rolled again, Whoopi, ever the professional, brought the show back with grace. Welcome back to The View. We're here with the legendary Denzel Washington, who's been sharing more than just thoughts on film, but on leadership, education, and legacy. Rosie forced a nod, attempting to smooth the air. Look, I don't always get it right, she said, her tone softer now. But I do believe in holding people accountable, even the ones I admire. And Denzel, you clearly walk the walk. Denzel gave a slight nod, not smug, but gracious. Appreciate that. Accountability's a two-way street, long as we're all walking in the same direction, progress. That line hit. Even Rosie cracked a genuine smile. Sunny leaned toward Denzel, half joking, you sure you're not running for anything? The crowd laughed. Denzel smiled wide for the first time that morning. Nah, I'm just trying to raise better men than me. That's a full-time job already. Whoopi clapped. Joy chimed in with a rare word of agreement, that's the kind of message we need more of on this show. Rosie, still humbled, nodded in silence. As the segment neared its close, the tone in the studio had fully shifted. The earlier tension had been replaced by something unexpected, reverence. Denzel leaned into his closing thoughts, his voice calm but firm, as if he were addressing not just the hosts, but the entire country. We live in a time where loudness gets mistaken for leadership. But real strength isn't about shouting others down, it's about standing firm in your values when it's uncomfortable. The audience fell quiet again, soaking in his words. If we want change, not just talk about it, but build it, then we've got to stop dismissing people who take a different road to the same goal. I don't need a suit and a title to care about the future of this country. Rosie, perhaps for the first time on the show that season, didn't try to spin or snark her way out of it. Instead, she simply extended her hand across the table. Truce. Denzel looked at her hand, then smiled, not in triumph, but in peace, and shook it. Always. The credits rolled over thunderous applause. As the camera panned wide, one thing was clear, Denzel hadn't just won an argument, he had raised the bar. Backstage, producers whispered about the moment going viral. By the time Denzel left the building, clips of his response were already racking up millions of views, titled things like, Denzel Washington teaches The View a masterclass in grace under fire. When calm intelligence beats loud ego. And the most popular one of all, Rosie mocked Denzel's smarts, he gave her a reality check she'll never forget. America had witnessed something rare, not a celebrity meltdown, but a lesson in respect, accountability, and quiet, commanding power. The following morning, headlines were everywhere. Social media was ablaze. Memes, quotes, stitched videos, all centered around one moment, Denzel's silent stare after Rosie's jab. On Twitter, the hashtag Denzel was right trended for over 24 hours. Clips of the exchange were shown on Good Morning America, CNN, even late-night shows. And while many viewers praised Denzel for his composure, something unexpected happened, Rosie O'Donnell tweeted. I was out of line. Denzel reminded me what grace under fire looks like. I've got some learning to do, and I'm listening. Her honesty drew praise of its own, and it marked a rare moment of mutual accountability in the world of cable TV bickering. As for Denzel, he didn't give a follow-up interview. Didn't comment. Didn't need to. Instead, he quietly doubled down on his work, appearing later that week at a youth mentorship summit in Atlanta. No press, no entourage, just him, a microphone, and a group of kids leaning in to listen. Because that's who Denzel Washington is. He doesn't raise his voice. He raises the standard. Later that week, a leaked clip from The View's post-show meeting surfaced online, a candid moment captured when the cameras had stopped rolling but the tension hadn't. In the clip, Rosie can be seen rubbing her forehead, clearly still shaken. "I thought it'd be a funny jab," she muttered to the producers. "I didn't expect him to come back with a sermon." One of the producers, trying to tread lightly, responded, "You poked the wrong bear, Rosie. That man doesn't play TV politics, he plays the long game." Back in the green room, Denzel reportedly spoke briefly with Whoopi Goldberg, who patted his shoulder and said simply, "About time someone brought some class back to daytime television." Later that evening, a private text from Denzel was shared publicly by a young teacher he'd been mentoring. The message read, "Never let someone define your intelligence by their comfort zone. Be excellent anyway." That line took on a life of its own. It was turned into posters in classrooms, used in speeches, printed on T-shirts. Even a few politicians quoted it in televised addresses, trying to borrow a piece of the dignity Denzel had displayed. And while the internet would eventually move on, those few minutes on The View remained a cultural touchstone, not just for what was said, but for how it was handled. Weeks passed, and the dust around the View episode finally settled, but the ripple effects didn't. Denzel's calm, unapologetic stand became a case study in media ethics seminars, leadership workshops, and communication courses across the country. A Harvard professor even used it in a lecture titled, "When Integrity Meets Ego, The Power of Quiet Confidence." Meanwhile, Rosie O'Donnell returned to the show a few episodes later and addressed the audience directly, "I made a mistake. I misjudged the moment, and the man. I've been loud for a long time, but I'm realizing volume doesn't equal value." That humility earned her rare applause. But Denzel? He stayed out of the spotlight, intentionally. Instead, he increased his investment in an inner-city educational nonprofit he'd quietly funded for years. The nonprofit reported a surge in donations and mentorship applications after the broadcast. One of the students wrote in a letter, "I used to think smart people didn't look like me, then I saw Denzel Washington on TV, and he didn't raise his voice once, but everyone listened." That letter went viral too. And just like that, what began as a public insult turned into a national lesson, about perception, purpose, and the power of refusing to be small when challenged. In the age of outrage, Denzel didn't clap back. He stood tall. And that made all the difference. Months later, at a televised town hall focused on youth empowerment and media accountability, Rosie O'Donnell and Denzel Washington appeared together, by choice. The crowd was stunned. The moderator, not missing the moment, asked Rosie directly, "Why did you agree to sit down again with Denzel after everything that happened?" Rosie looked across the stage at Denzel before answering. "Because I needed to grow. And growth doesn't happen when you're comfortable, it happens when you get called out, with dignity." Denzel gave a quiet nod, then added, "We all get moments in life that test our ego. Some of us react. Some of us reflect. The people who reflect, they lead." The applause that followed wasn't just polite, it was emotional. One young audience member stood up and said, "That moment on The View taught me how to respond when someone disrespects me in public, without losing myself." And that was the legacy, not the clash, not the viral moment, not the headlines, but the example. What began as a tense exchange on live television had become a blueprint for how to handle conflict with character. And in a world addicted to shouting, Denzel reminded America that sometimes silence speaks the loudest. Just when the story seemed to have run its course, another unexpected moment reignited the national conversation. At a White House Correspondents' Dinner, the president, known for his wit and carefully crafted remarks, paused mid-speech, smiled, and said, "Now, I know we've got a lot of strong voices in this room tonight, but if I ever get in real trouble, I'm calling Denzel Washington, not my press secretary." The entire ballroom erupted in laughter and applause. Even the press corps couldn't help but cheer. Cameras cut to Denzel in the crowd, seated discreetly near the back, giving a small wave and nod. It was more than a joke. It was an acknowledgement. The moment had officially entered the cultural lexicon, not just as a meme or soundbite, but as a symbol of the kind of leadership people were hungry for. And just outside that room, a group of young interns huddled around a phone replaying the View clip again. One of them whispered, "He didn't even raise his voice. And he still won." Another replied, "That's what power actually looks like." And just like that, the moment lived on. Not in outrage, but in inspiration. The moment reached a new peak when educators across the country began integrating the View exchange into high school and college lesson plans. One high school civics teacher in Chicago added a new unit called Public Discourse Poise Under Pressure. At the center of it, Denzel Washington's calm response to Rosie O'Donnell. Students were assigned to watch the segment, analyze tone, body language, and message, then write essays on how to handle disagreement without resorting to disrespect. One standout student essay read, "He didn't attack her, he elevated the conversation." That's leadership. That's maturity. That's what I want to be. Universities followed suit. Georgetown's School of Public Policy invited Denzel to deliver a guest lecture titled, "Silence, Substance, and Standing Tall." In it, he shared, "You don't need to raise your voice if you stand on solid ground. When the truth is on your side, all you have to do is show up, steady, clear, and focused." He received a standing ovation. Later, a Georgetown dean remarked, "We've had senators speak here, world leaders. But none struck a chord quite like Denzel did that day." And perhaps most importantly, Rosie O'Donnell co-signed the curriculum. If my misstep can help students learn how to be better humans, then maybe it was worth it. A full year after the iconic exchange on The View, a national youth summit titled, "Stand Tall, The Power of Grace in Public Discourse," was held in Washington, D.C. Denzel Washington was the keynote speaker. He walked on stage to a crowd of over 10,000 students, teachers, activists, and leaders. No celebrity fanfare, no entourage, just Denzel, in a simple suit, with a steady gaze and a message. "The loudest voices often get the most attention," he began. "But history remembers the ones who spoke with purpose, and held the room with silence." He paused. You could hear a pin drop. What happened on that show wasn't about embarrassment or ego. It was about reminding people that respect is a choice, and so is dignity. Every one of you has a voice. Just make sure you know why you're using it. The audience stood as one. Rosie O'Donnell, who had flown in quietly and sat near the back, wiped away a tear. She later posted on social media, "Denzel didn't just shut me down. He woke me up. And I'm still learning." In the end, what started as a clash of personalities turned into a national conversation, not about who won the argument, but how the argument was handled. It wasn't a viral moment anymore. It was a new standard. One man. One moment. A masterclass in strength without shouting. Denzel didn't just respond. He rewrote the script.